like this. Maybe back. Too much. That's fine. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Liz Live. I am Liz Statlander, and you are watching the Liz Live show tonight on this beautiful Wednesday evening here down in Miami. And hello to everybody out there who's watching and who's going to watch. So tonight we're talking about one of my favorite topics. My favorite topic always being love. Love, and relationships. And of course, I'm so passionate about love and relationships that I chose to dedicate my entire living and schooling to just that. And all of those things, my passion for relationships and my education, but more so the experience that I have as a relationship counselor has taught me so many things and is still teaching me so many things about relationships. And of course, the most complicated, complex relationship known to man is the romantic relationship. And I have all kinds of theories as to why I think that romantic relationships are so complex. But what I do for a living is sit with, yes, many individuals, but also couples that need help getting their relationship on track, making their relationships work, their romantic relationships work, of course. And it's quite a challenging task. And I have a couple of things that I have learned from doing this work, more than a couple, but a couple of things that I can really break down and share with you so that you can take these things with you tonight and share them with your partners or your friends, your family, that my experience has really taught me about how to have a successful relationship. And you won't find what I'm going to tell you tonight. You're not going to find it in textbooks, and you're not going to find it likely from other therapists, because what I feel like we hear all the time from other therapists is, and in order to have a healthy relationship, you have to have trust and honesty and blah, blah, blah. And we all know that those things are important, right? I mean, we don't need a master's degree or 15 years experience as a couples therapist or to know that, those are some of the basic virtues that we all seek in all of our relationships. And that is not what you're going to hear tonight. And you're going to hear something very different. And, you can take it or leave it, but it all comes from experience that I have had from sitting with couples and also from my own life. So, okay. So in my advertisement is the three things. What are the three things that can make your romantic relationship successful? And it's not so much that if you have these three things that it will be successful, but it's more about these three important traits or divisions, you could almost say, that all relationships have. And some of us have a different balance of these three things going on. And when these three things get out of balance, then sometimes it really messes up the feeling of the relationship. So what these three things are, and you can go ahead and get your pencils and pens ready if you want to write it down, or, this is always available on the replay. All of my shows are. But the three most important components to a relationship, in my opinion, are friendship, number one, number two, compatibility, and number three, sexuality. Those are the three big components that all romantic relationships have at least a little bit of. Okay. They make up romance. And those three things actually, in my view, make up intimacy. And we're going to get to intimacy a little bit later once I break down the friendship, companionship, and sexuality pieces. And all of those things together in one, if you put all of those things in one bucket, they make up intimacy. And intimacy is difficult to define. I used to lecture on this to other um, I used to lecture to other students who are in school to become therapists, and I would get all kinds of answers and definitions when I would ask people to define intimacy. It's hard to define. So for the purposes of tonight, I would define it as an integration in the romantic sense. If we're talking about intimacy in a romantic sense, we're talking about the integration of sex and love together. And I believe, and I have seen that intimacy is very difficult to achieve. And I believe it's difficult to achieve because it's not natural. It doesn't follow our animalistic urges, and it doesn't really, if you think about why we have sex in the most basic sense, it's to procreate, right? It's to pass on our species and to so that the species will survive. And the love part, if you look at the love part, the very basic, in a very basic sense, we coupled with each other to raise a family. And that raising a family and procreating don't really equal intimacy. In fact, you can have children and raise a family together and hate each other, or become very distant with each other. It does not equal intimacy. And I think that's a big mistake, that we believe that, oh, well, if we're living in the same house as someone and we have children with them, then we're being intimate. Wrong. You're not being intimate. Being intimate, I don't believe is natural. And I think it's something that we almost have to train ourselves or teach ourselves how to have it. And some of us are naturally better at achieving intimacy than others. And I think a lot of that goes back to our other relationships, starting with mom and dad, siblings, friends. If we've had a positive experience with our relationships, then intimacy is going to be easier for those people to achieve. Whereas most of us, had some trauma in our relationships with mom and dad and family and friends from, beginning early years at some point. And so that then makes intimacy, in my view, much more difficult to achieve. So we're going to get there, I promise, but we're going to start out really just simply breaking down these three components. So let's talk about the most obvious one. And the most obvious one that people forget about is friendship. Okay. So many couples that I work with are not friends. And if you're not friends, it's going to be really difficult to live with that person for the rest of your life, or until divorce you part or whatever. It's going to be very difficult. And friends, to develop a friendship, you need to spend time together, quality time together, not time where everyone's looking at their phones and, answering business calls and, scrolling on social media all night while the other person's doing the same. That is not a friendship. So if you think about how you made your first friendships, you could think back to, I don't know, as early as you can remember. I think about, maybe I can remember preschool and making great friends in preschool. And there was just something about another kid that you liked, and you can't really put your finger on what it is. And as you develop that relationship, that friendship, that's developed by quality time together, by, showing up for each other, being there through things with each other, being present with each other, and going through experiences together, and really looking at the other person as somebody that you like, that you really like to spend time with, that you really enjoy spending time with. And so, in the most basic sense, friendship is one of the most important qualities of a successful relationship, romantic relationship, that we forget. We forget that we're supposed to be friends, and we wind up abandoning the friendship. And if you think about all the people that you are friends with, and you think about how you develop those friendships, you're going to really be able to think about how to build friendships with your partner, with your romantic partner. And again, we forget so often that you have to like your partner besides love or find them sexually attractive. If you don't like them, then everything else is going to go away and it's just going to die. It's just not going to work. Okay. So, number 2 is compatibility. Compatibility is not the same thing as friendship. Friendship, again, is building trust in a relationship by spending time together, being there for each other, enjoying each other's company, being interested in each other. Compatibility to me is much more simplistic. So, compatibility is, do we like to do the same things? Do we have the same interests? Are we compatible people to live together? Do we like the same lifestyle? Do we have the same goals in life? Do we have the same hopes and dreams as our partner? And if you're not compatible, big problems, right? And so, you might say, well, how do I know if I'm compatible with someone? And I think of it in a very simplistic, basic terms. Um, I like to go to the gym and I like to work out, and fitness is a big part of my life. And I don't know that I would mesh very well with someone who was, a sack of potatoes and didn't want to work out or take care of themselves in that way. It just probably wouldn't be a compatible person for me. Doesn't mean I can't be good friends with them, or possibly even be able to develop a sex life with them. But the long term, long haul sort of expectation that we have out of marriage and romantic relationships, it's really not going to work out if you're not compatible. And we lie to ourselves, and we, sometimes, and we say, well, I can get into this or I can get into that. My partner likes to fish and I don't. And if you're willing to take one for the team and go do things that you don't usually like to do, that's all the more power to you. But I also think that, just basic compatibility. Do you have the same political views? That's becoming a big issue for couples right now. Do you have the same values? Do you have the same life goals? Do you both want to retire to North Carolina when you're 65, or do you both want to work till the day you die? And do you both like the same type of living style, or is somebody really clean and someone's really messy? Or, they seem like these little trivial things, but they really do make a difference when we're talking about a romantic relationship that's going to be successful. And when I say successful, I mean thrive and last. So we have the friendship piece, critical. Compatibility, I think, critical. And then both of those components go into the sexuality piece. Okay. So what do I mean sexuality? Why is that so important? Well, sex is the one thing that a romantic couple does that you don't do with everybody else. That's what makes the romantic relationship romantic. That's what makes it special. That's what makes it intimate. And I do believe that, sexual compatibility sometimes isn't there. And I do believe that it can be worked on as long as you're both attracted to each other. If you're not really that attracted to the other one, it's going to be very difficult to develop your sexual compatibility. Although I've seen people do it, but the sexual piece is important. And we have to figure out, are we sexually compatible? Maybe your partner has a super high sex drive and you want sex once a month. Okay. That's not sexually compatible. And that can create big problems in a long-term sense. So it's important that the sex life stays alive as best as it can as you age. And granted, I'm only 45, so I don't know from personal experience, how to keep it going when you're 75 or 80, or if you even care at that point. And you're probably going to care a lot less about your sexual prowess as you get older, because other things will become more important, but it still needs to be there. So we have friendship, compatibility, and sexuality as three major components of a relationship, a successful one that we need to look at. And at any given time, those things can kind of go up and down. And I was explaining it to someone the other day as sort of like a sound mixing. If you turn up the volume, you see the volume go up, right, in lights or something on on your stereo system or your television. And you can turn up the treble and turn down the bass and turn up the general volume. And you can play around with the levels of these three components that are coming into your relationship, depending on what works best for you and your partner. But they're always kind of going to be the underlying things that have to be there and have to be paid attention to. So you might turn up the sexuality piece, for a couple months, and, maybe the friendship piece is going to go down a few, and compatibility might go up, and so on and so forth, and flip around however you want. And I think these three things are interchangeable, and they're all connected too, because if you're, really sexually compatible, that might make you feel more compatible in general, but it's actually not compatibility. There are people who are sexually compatible that cannot be friends, and that cannot that really don't have anything else in common. And I've seen all of these combinations in my practice over the last decade plus that I've been doing this work. So it's a very delicate mix. It's a very special, almost like magic, when you can have all three firing on all cylinders. But I don't think that it's a reasonable expectation that all of those things are going to be firing on all cylinders all the time, especially if we're talking about long-term relationships and marriages. So we have to understand that, remember, they're going to be up and down, and we'll have to readjust the friendship, compatibility, sexuality things as we go along in our lives, and we enter different developmental stages, and we go through different things in our lives. And, I think often I'm dealing with a lot of people right now who lost, who are grieving, who lost someone they love. And when you're grieving or you're depressed, it's likely that the sexuality piece is going to go way down. It doesn't mean it's gone. It's just going to go way down because people might feel too emotionally exhausted to get into that. But the friendship or the compatibility pieces might turn way up, because in times of grief or depression, when someone's going through something hard, if their partner can show up for them, which is what good friends do, which is why friendship is so important, then they can get through that time, and a different type of intimacy can develop, even in the worst of times, that could really put the fire in your sexuality, in the future. So you always have to think about, you're kind of juggling and adjusting and tuning up and down these three big pieces of your relationship. And all the while that you're playing around with those knobs, they're trying to get them even and equal. What you're doing, in essence, is you're creating intimacy. You're creating a closeness. You're creating a very special connection with your partner that really cannot exist without the other three pieces. If you don't have friendship with your partner, and you're not compatible with them, and you don't have sex with them, you are not being intimate. You're just not. And in my view, the way that I look at intimacy when I'm dealing with couples is, if there's one of those things that is, like banana, like you're just another word, and it's really serious, and it's really, really hard to achieve. And I think we put so much we misuse the word in so many ways, and we throw it around like, we all have it, or, and we don't. And it's, really, really difficult to get to real, true intimacy. Very difficult. And don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging, and I'm going to definitely talk about how to get to the point of intimacy and how to work with those three components if my dog would stop barking, of course. And then, he always has to have the spotlight, but if he will just quiet down a minute, and then I'm going to talk to you about these different components and actually how to put it into practice and give you some ideas on how to create friendship, compatibility, intimacy, even if you feel like all is lost. And I have about 8 questions that I got from my clients that I think will address a lot of these things that I'm going to go through in a minute and talk about. Because I think they're probably questions that you have. And feel free to type on the screen. If you have a question, don't be shy. I will answer it to the best of my ability tonight. So usually I get a lot of questions, and, this topic, I think people are really shy about it. But if you feel like, commenting or asking a question, please do, and I will absolutely answer it, or maybe it'll come up as we go along. Okay. So one really important thing that I want to make sure I say tonight, and I might say it a couple more times, is that each one of us, you, me, the person sitting next to you, all of us, we take way too much on when it comes to making our partners happy. We essentially cannot actually do that. We cannot actually make our partners content or happy with themselves. We can make them happy in a moment. We can make life better by joining together and being together, but we cannot actually make someone else truly joyful. And we can be icing on cake, we can be a cheerleader, we can be support, we can be many important things, but we can't take all of that on. We cannot take on that responsibility of making someone else happy. Because if we do that, what we're going to find is that over and over again, you put him up on the bed because I think over and over again, we're going to be very disappointed and we're going to be very let down, because that is something that each one of us is responsible for. Each one of us is responsible for making ourselves happy. And we can do that in the context of a relationship. We don't have to be single. I don't believe that, in order to find joy and happiness within ourselves. But we cannot take all of that on. That, well, I'm going to keep trying to make him happy, or try to make her happy, and I'm going to do this, and maybe if I do that. And what you're going to find is none of it's going to work. None of it's going to work. And I think that that's really important to say when we're talking about successful, long-standing romantic relationships. It's very important to understand that. So, okay. Now that that's said, let's go back and let's examine each one of these pieces. So we have friendship, compatibility, and sexuality. Okay, so let's talk about friendship. How do you become friends with your partner when you maybe can't stand them, or they get on your nerves, or just the sound of them breathing, is irritating? All of those things that, everybody goes through in long-term relationships. How do you become friends? Because, if you want to be friends, you have to actually spend time with the person. If you can't stand them, you're going to avoid them and not want to spend time with them. So what I would ask you to do, if you feel like you don't have a friendship with your significant other, or you want a closer friendship, look inside of you, because chances are you are resentful towards that other person for something that they did or said or didn't do, or in some way hurt you over and over again. And instead of facing that and having that conversation with them, you've kept it to yourself, and you have not tried to work that out. And when that happens, when you get resentful, you actually start kind of disliking your partner. And when you start resenting and disliking them, you start losing respect for them. You start looking for everything wrong with them instead of everything right with them. And you sort of stop investing yourself in the relationship emotionally and, time wise. So you really want to think about that. And if you really are honest with yourself, put your finger on that resentment and look into it. And maybe you need to write about it or call a therapist or talk to a friend, but ultimately talk to your partner about the way that you're feeling so you can sort of remove that and get past all that and maybe actually try to enjoy their company again. Because if you were friends with them once before, there's a good chance you can be friends with them again. Maybe you were never really friends to begin with. I've seen that. And so in that case, you have to try to get to know this person all over again. You have to try to spend time with them and do fun things together, not just sit around and watch TV. If you're sitting around and watching TV and you're hands in hands and you're having an experience together, that's fine. But I think that if any of us looks back on any of the friendships that we have, we develop those friendships through quality time, through experiences, and through sharing with them, confiding in them, telling them how we really feel, enjoying their company. And I think we completely forget how to do that with our significant others because we grow to resent them over time a little bit. I think even in the best relationships, we tend to go through periods where we're more resentful than we are appreciative or grateful that we have them in our lives, and we get lost and we lose the friendship. So if you're curious, well, how do I rebuild that friendship? I mean, number one is look at what's blocking it. Because like I said, you probably were friends with them at some point and the friendship was lost because of avoiding issues, not working through resentment. And I mean, I could do a whole show on resentment itself, and I will. But tonight we're just kind of doing an overview, okay? And think about how you formed every other friendship, and you probably also forgave a lot, right? Because all of our friends hurt us or piss us off or upset us, and but you forgive and you move on and you talk about it, and these are all really important aspects, again, of a relationship, of which I could do a show on each one of them because they're so important. But go to a movie, go walk in the park, get out of the house, go do something really fun that you've never done together, anything. Nothing's off limits. And reintroduce yourselves, because we do grow and change over the course of life, and we're not always going to be the same. And keep reintroducing ourselves to our partners and keep it exciting that way. Start again and again and again and develop that friendship over and over and over again. And it's mandatory for a successful life. You have to be friends. You have to enjoy hanging out with each other. A good hang, as my nephew would say. It's got to be a good hang, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be a good hang. So, okay, so let's get into compatibility a little deeper. So I think compatibility sort of speaks for itself, and I think it's a quality in romantic relationships that's undersold. And we want to be idealistic and think that, gee, I could be compatible with, so many different people, but you really can't. Because when we're talking about compatibility in the terms of a romantic relationship, we're talking about able to live under the same roof as another person for the rest of your life, or until death or divorce you part. So talking about a long period of time in the same living space, sharing a bed, sharing a home, sharing children, perhaps, sharing finances, perhaps, sharing pets, closet space, a bathroom. This is this is huge, and we forget how difficult it is to really have compatibility with other people. And we kind of get used to, the way that we're raised in our families, and then we go out onto our own, and we make our own lifestyles, and we live our own way. But we have to be able to want the same things out of our daily life and our life in general as our partners, or you're going to start to grow apart. And one of the questions I ask couples a lot when they come in is, do you know your partner's life goals? Do you know what makes them tick? Do you know what they really want to get out of life? And oftentimes people have no idea. They have no idea. And then they wonder why they're in couples therapy, right? Because they're not compatible, or they haven't, even really discovered whether they're compatible or not, never thought about it. And for the first time in maybe 15 years, they're really, going, gee, I don't even know what my wife wants to do when she retires, or what are we even working towards, or what do we really want for little Susie and little Johnny? It could be totally different. So please, I beg you, if you are just in a relationship and you're thinking about getting married, or you're thinking about moving in with someone, discuss this. Are you compatible? Do you like to do the same things? Do you want the same things out of life? I've sat with couples where, one person was working because they wanted to buy a vacation home at, 65 and, in Florida. And the other one, wanted to buy a farm in the eastern suburbs, completely different. And how do you work that out? Someone has to give up a lot, and there's a way to work it out, but it's not going to be easy. And again, I go back to the example of, I'm doing something active every single day. I'm just not going to work with a sack of potatoes. It would drive me crazy. And I'm sure that people who don't move their bodies and don't work out or don't exercise and eat healthy would be completely annoyed by me, because it's just not what they want to do. It's not their happy place. I couldn't live with someone who wants to eat fast food every day, because I don't eat fast food. Right. I mean, these are simple little things, and I'm not saying they're going to make or break a marriage, but they all go into that piece, that compatibility piece. I love dogs. If you don't like dogs, we're not compatible. It's not going to happen, right? And you get to know these things about yourself as you get older. And I'm sure as I'm talking, all of you are sort of taking inventory on, yeah, well, it's a good point. Am I compatible? And maybe we need to turn, the volume up on the compatibility, or maybe we need to turn it down because we're such great friends. Maybe we're not as compatible, but we're really good friends and our sex is good. So, I can deal with the other things. So, that's how you have to kind of think about it. Okay, moving on. Sexuality. Very complicated, very complex territory, truthfully, that I think is highly unexplored by most couples. I'm amazed at, couples who come in who've been married for 10, 15, 20 years. They've never talked about sex with their partners before. They have no idea what the other one likes. They have no idea what turns the other one on. And they don't enjoy sex, never did. And, put that aside for, other things. And again, if both of you are good with that, then that's compatibility and that's fine. But if one person is longing for more sexual intimacy, more sexual experiences and encounters and exploring that, and the other one isn't, big problem, because feelings get hurt, people feel abandoned, they feel neglected, and it's huge. It's huge. I work with couples that haven't had sex in years. Um, don't use it, you lose it. So then they need to get it back on track. And I'm not a sex therapist. There are trained sex therapists who can, really get into the nitty gritty of that. But, I'm just, again, talking in general terms that if you don't talk about it and you avoid it all the time, that's going to be a piece that's going to die. It's going to fade out and that's going to hurt all the other aspects of your relationship. So it may not be the top of the list, most important thing all the time. But again, it's the one thing that separates you and your partner from all the other friendships and relationships that you have. Hopefully, you're only having sex with your partner unless you both agree to have an open relationship. That's something else. But generally speaking, America is a largely, monogamous country, a country that values monogamy. And monogamy is difficult. Monogamy means relationship with one person. And I don't know if it's even natural, but it's what we're largely, doing anyway. So that's why I have a job. And, if you don't talk to each other and know each other sexually or allow each other to get to know each other sexually and, work on that, then you're done at some point. You're done. It's going to be cause resentment and hurt and pain. And, even if the conversation is, I want to have sex every day and I want to have sex, once a month. Okay, can we meet in the middle? And how can we negotiate the differences? Or how do we make each other feel more desired or more desirable? And again, very complex, ever changing. I could do 20 shows on that alone. And, it's just important. And I would say more hurt feelings in marriages come from the lack of sexuality or the lack of paying attention to it than a lot of things. It leads to affairs. It leads to all kinds of, boundary crossing on social media and so on and so forth. So it's just something that really has to be tended to, paid attention to in order to have that big, beautiful, intimate relationship that will stand the test of time. Okay. Not easy, but possible. But possible. So, okay. So now that I went through all that, of course, if you guys have any questions or comments, put it up in the chat. But I'm going to, if no one's going to, everyone's going to be shy tonight, that's okay. I'm going to go through some of the questions that I got from my clients and I'll see, I don't know how many I can get through, but let's see what we can get through. Okay. So we do have to remember that all relationships are a work in progress and we have to see them as such. There's not a finish line. There's not an arrival. There's growth and then there's fallback and there's growth and there's fallback. And this sort of back and forth motion is the motion of life, right? Like the ocean comes in and out, waves of good times and bad times come in and out. It's not always going to be one way. It's not always going to be crazy sex. It's not always going to be best friends. It's not always going to be complete compatibility. That is a losing expectation because it will never happen that way. But you might have a couple of months or 6 months or a year or so where things are really firing on all cylinders. But expect the waves, right? Okay. So number one question I get from men all the time, and a lot of wives, a lot of women too. I'm a man having sexual performance issues. Any advice? Okay. And this happens a lot in marriages and relationships. So first piece of advice I have for you, if you're a man that's having performance issues, is go to a doctor and get a complete blood work done and get your testosterone level checked, get your thyroid checked, and get a really good in-depth look at yourself biologically, because it could be that, or it could be psychological issues, or a combination of both. But first we have to take a picture of what's going on biologically, so that so I can be informed of what's going on in your body that might be contributing to that, so we can either rule it in or rule it out. So it's number one, most important thing, get those things checked. And check out your medications. If you're on a lot of medications, look at those medications, look them up, and find out if there's any sexual side effects. Antidepressants have sexual side effects, make it very difficult to perform. Drugs and alcohol can really destroy your libido, because what drugs and alcohol do is they essentially they numb you out, they numb your emotions, they block your emotions. So if you can't feel your emotions, it's very hard to feel, in your sexual performance. I mean, it's hard to feel anything if you're always high or drunk or whatever. So, cigarette smoking, diabetes, obesity, all of those things will contribute. Poor body image, all of those things can contribute to, performance issues in men and women. But men have, I do believe, a lot more pressure when it comes to performing than women. And so that would be my answer to that. And then make sure you come see me or a therapist of your choice. Hopefully it'll be me or someone that you feel comfortable with, and discuss it with them and try and figure out, okay, well, if we're ruling out and it's nothing biological and it's nothing you're putting into your body, okay, let's go now. Let the therapist step in and take over and help you kind of get to the bottom of what might be causing those performance issues. Is it anxiety? Is it fear of, I run into a lot of men that are, they have a lot of trouble sexualizing women that they love. So in other words, we call it Madonna syndrome, but men will put the woman that they really love, on sort of a pedestal, and they don't want to sexualize them because they have a negative association with sexualization. And so therefore they can't perform when, faced with their primary partner, even if they're totally attracted to them and everything. It's very complicated. So that's another show. It's another show. But okay, moving on. This is a good one. Can sexual chemistry be made if it's not there? And, that is a very, very tough, very, very tough question to answer. To the best of my abilities, I'm going to try. I think that, is it sexual chemistry or is it attraction? If you are physically attracted to your partner, there's always hope. Okay. You can again, it usually begins with looking inward and taking down those walls that you have. The walls of, afraid of being judged, afraid of being rejected, afraid of being, not pretty enough, or not, brawn enough, or not, wealthy enough, or not smart. I mean, people have all kinds of things that block their ability to really get into that sexual chemistry place. So if you're physically attracted to your partner, yes, I think you can create sexual chemistry for sure. If you're not attracted because of whatever reason, there's it's just not there for you. You don't look at them and think they're really, attractive or beautiful or handsome or whatever. I don't know that you can create the chemistry then. because I think, sexual chemistry in its bare essence is just physical attraction. It's just that. And, once you get to know someone, something might turn you on or turn you off. But if you've been together a long time and you find that other person attractive, yes, we can make that chemistry happen, I believe. But if you're not attracted to them, I'm not sure that that's possible. Okay, question number 3. Me and my partner used to be best friends. Now we have grown so far apart, I don't know how to get it back. Okay. And I bet everyone watching this is going, I've been there, right? Because that is a very common issue with long-term relationships. And again, I guess I sound like a broken record, but I believe what I'm saying to be true, that if you're having trouble with a friendship, if you're having trouble with your sex life, look at yourself first. Because it's very easy to point the finger and blame, Well, he doesn't do that. Well, she doesn't do this. Well, he doesn't do that. Because then it takes the responsibility off of us, right? But I believe that we all have to look at ourselves first before we go pointing the finger. And we have to ask ourselves, is there anything I've done that could be pushing my partner away? Have I hurt my partner in any way? Am I blocking my partner from being close to me? And when you take that self inventory, if you come up with nothing, which would surprise me, but if you really come up with nothing, and sometimes that's the case, then you need to go to your partner and ask. You need to go to your partner and say, hey, we used to be best friends. I miss you. What can we do to reconnect? And again, think back to your best friend from childhood and how you built that friendship, or your best friend that you have today. How did you get that closeness? Well, because you confided in each other, you shared, you didn't judge, you supported each other, you laughed together, you do fun things together, you spend time with them. And it's that simple, So building a friendship is fun and easy. It's not that difficult. The romance is difficult. The sex is difficult. I think the friendship, is an easier thing to sort of rediscover, because there's not a lot of pressure with friendship. Just show up and ask if you have done something to hurt the other person and push them away. And if they tell you, even if you think they're crazy and you disagree, acknowledge it. Acknowledge it and apologize, because we're not always going to understand, in which ways or what ways we've hurt our partner, because let's face it, I mean, we're not in their body, we're not in their brain, we're not in their soul. They're their own human being, and they may take offense or find painful something you did or said or do all the time and never said anything, and now they're just backing away. So ask, don't be afraid to ask. And if you want to recreate that friendship, you have to put in the time and stay off of the damn phones, because they're ruining relationships, as is social media. And I'm a hypocrite because I use both, but have boundaries with it. Have boundaries with it. Okay, next question. We have great sex, but I don't feel very connected with my partner. What can I do? Well, my answer would be, you're okay. Your sex is in check, good. But the connection isn't there. Well, there must be some connection there if you're having good sex. So all is not lost. So I would, again, go back to the friendship piece, self-inventory, and communicate. And if you have problems with these things, which most people do, just call me and I'll walk you through it. I can't walk you through it in a, hour-long podcast, but, I'll walk you through it. Okay. I feel we are best friends, but for some reason, I'm not feeling sexually attracted anymore. Okay. Happens all the time, especially with long-term relationships. So, there's an interesting little piece of biochemistry that is important to take note of. Okay. So, when we meet somebody new and we first start having sex with them, our hormones are going crazy, and our oxytocin levels, which are our bonding hormones, um, are through the roof. And, we don't know why that is. Researchers, we don't really know why it is in the early stages, but we believe it has something to do with, procreation, because we want you to stick with, the design is that you're going to, you know, stick with this person and just fall in love with them and have babies. And, that's the way it used to, that's what we were, here for essentially in the very beginning, or what we believed we were here for in the very beginning. So now we've evolved and changed so much, and our relationships are meaningful. They have so much more meaning and so much more complexity than they used to. But with that, so your biochemistry is going crazy in the beginning. Your oxytocin's off the charts, your dopamine, everything. Oh my God, I'm in love. I can't be without them. I want to have sex with them every 5 minutes and can't keep my hands off of them. And then, like anything else, over time, it kind of wears off a little bit. But there's actually a biochemical reason that that's happening, and that is because our oxytocin levels go crazy through the roof in the beginning, and then what research tells us is that somewhere between I think it's 1.5 and 5 years. It's different for everybody. So let's say the average of 3 years, the oxytocin starts to take a dive down, and you don't feel that insane craziness for your partner that you used to feel. And so now you have to maybe turn up the friendship compatibility pieces, because maybe the sexual piece is kind of on the downturn, right? So you're always, again, trying to balance and juggle these three components that I speak of tonight. And it's natural for you to get bored of having sex with the same person for, years and years and years. It's normal, it's natural. It doesn't mean the relationship's over, but what it can mean is, hey, we need to like reboot here, and we need to, maybe go to couples therapy and clean some things up or clear some things out, or maybe we need to try something new or shake up our routine and put some effort into it. And I think that the sex life of people today is a disaster because everyone's working all the time. Everyone's exhausted from answering 100 text messages and reading 500 emails and performing their job and taking care of the house and kids and pets and whatever else you have going on in your life and working out and making dinner, that we just don't have the energy for it anymore. And I believe that's why, people's sex lives are in the shit can, everybody's. And I think it's why, if you look at internet porn, it's like through the roof, and, cheating on social media and sexting and all these things, because they don't require any effort like a real relationship does. And, they might get your hormones jumping a little bit quicker than, the same person that you've seen naked 1,000 times. And so, it's just normal, but you might need to do a little boot or a little couples therapy, which again, I'm available. Okay. So, let's go to the next one. Oh, this is an interesting one. My partner has sexual hangups. I want to be understanding, but I have a higher libido. Okay. So that was written by one of my clients. It's not totally clear to me. But it sounds like there's a couple questions in one. Okay. So your partner has sexual hangups. Well, what are those things? Are they really hangups, or what is it? And you have a higher libido. Well, I hate to tell you this, guys, but some recent studies that have come out show that women enjoy sex just as much as men, but men don't know what they're doing with their wives or husbands or whatever. And so that's why, your partner will sometimes avoid, because the sex isn't enjoyable for them. So you might think you have a higher libido, but you might not be really pleasing your partner. And so they're like, well, I don't really want to do this. He stinks, he's no good and bad, or he doesn't care about my needs or what I like. So before you're quick to say, oh, I have a higher libido, check yourself and see if you're actually exciting your partner in the ways that you think you are, because you might not be. And if you think your partner has sexual hangups, again, you have to ask and make sure that you're correct about that. And if that's the case, then that would be where a therapist would need to step in. And is it a hangup, or are you just, maybe into something that she's not? Because those are two different subjects. Just because someone doesn't like everything you like sexually doesn't necessarily mean they have a hang up. It just might mean they just have different things that they like. So definitely, I would involve a therapist in that conversation. Okay, try and get through the last two before we end. I feel like me and my partner have nothing in common. It's pulling us apart. What can I do? And that's a tough one, again, because compatibility is undersold. It's incredibly important, and we don't focus enough on it when we're falling in love and we're choosing, who we want to live our lives with. And if you feel like you're not compatible anymore, again, that means that you once were. By saying anymore means you once were compatible. So if you were once compatible, what happens? And are you including each other in each other's hobbies, or are you opting not to? Or can you start doing some new things together and make some new routines, or get into some new activities and do some new things that will bring you together to make you feel like you're more compatible? Sometimes we have to get out of our comfort zones a little bit and say, okay, I hate messiness. And I say this because I'm a clean freak, but maybe I'm spending so much time cleaning the house that I'm not, spending time with my partner. Or maybe I'm so into my new, hobby of, playing on a softball team that I forgot about my husband, and maybe I should invite him to come along or to watch a game, make each other feel included. And, again, I think that compatibility is sort of always something that's kind of there or not, but it can be, certainly anything can be worked on. And so if you communicate, and again, you can always involve a therapist if you feel lost, and we can help you with that. Okay, one more minute. So, okay, I have to wrap it up here on YouTube. So I don't have time to get to any more questions, but I thank you very much for watching Liz Live this Wednesday evening. I hope you found it informative, and it's always available on the replay, and I will repost the link on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. My new toy is TikTok. And I want to please remind you guys to share, subscribe to my channel so you get notified of everything that's going on, and be kind to yourselves, and don't be afraid to talk to each other, and don't be afraid to ask for help from a good couples therapist if you need it. Actuationcounseling.com, #TalkShowTherapy. Liz Live is Wednesday nights at 8 and Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Always live. And I will see you guys Saturday morning. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great night.